Hey there, Stampers. My name is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I am here with a super cute fun fold for you today. Excuse me. It's called a purse fold. It fits in a standard size envelope. It's got a little handle. Look at that dimension. And there's a pocket at the back that can hold a gift card or a business card or something else, a little note. And then I've also added a little pocket on the inside for a tea bag. So I'm going to walk you through cutting everything, and we will be using a combination of leftover pieces from the Inked Occasions Paper Pumpkin Kit, which is the April 2025 Paper Pumpkin Kit, and a new bundle from the 2025-26 annual Stampin' Up! Catalog. Or actually, this isn't in the annual catalog, sorry. This is an online exclusive bundle. So you won't find it in any of our publications, but you can find it online. It's called the Impressions of Bloom Bundle. And I love these chunky ovals in this. This is what really drew me to the stamp set, but I love the simplicity of the flowers as well. So we're going to use that. And then, like I said, some contents from the kit. So first of all, if you're not familiar with Paper Pumpkin is a monthly subscription kit. And every month you get a box. It's usually a surprise. There are hints, but they don't show you the project that you're intended to make, which is part of the fun. And this month we got the supplies to create 9 cards, and these are the cards here. So each of 3 different designs. So there is one card, here is another, and then here is the 3rd card. Right? So what I usually do when I get my kit is I will make one of each of the projects, and then I do a live video where I scrapbook with it. And this is the layout that I created using some of the contents of the kit. Sorry, my door just blew open. Some of the contents of the kit. So I will link in the description below where you can find this video if you are a scrapbooker and would like to take a card kit and use the ideas that I've shared in this video. All right. Okay. And then I created a few other alternates. So let me share those before we get started here. So here is another one. So this is very similar to one of the cards in the design, in the kit, except instead of the patterned card base, I put it on a piece of white, and then I added some gold thread and some brushed brass butterflies. And then after I created, just trying to pull out these cards here. Okay, after I created this, I used the card front, I think it was 3 card fronts. So I had the backs of the cards. So then I cut, well, this is actually the front. I cut the back on the other one because I didn't want to, I wanted to keep this gold frame. So again, here I just used some gold twine and some of those brushed brass butterflies. And then this one here, again, this was the back of the card. So I just trimmed it down, used the Nested Essentials dies, added a gorgeous grape layer there, here and here. Again, some gold thread and some brushed brass butterflies. And then I had an extra card base, so I went ahead and did this, and every month you get some tissue paper in the box. So I just cut a strip of tissue paper, cut a circle, and then kind of wove that around, used one of the really pretty hugs word on there, stamped some of the butterflies, which are in the exclusive stamp set that comes with the kit. And that is that card. And so that leaves me with a card base. So we're going to use this card base today. I had a little strip left, which we're going to use as well. I have these pieces, which are meant to stamp the words. We're going to use one of these narrow pieces. We're going to use the stamp set. And then I've added in some ribbon. This is just some white ribbon and some coordinating cardstock. So if you want to replicate this project, you'll need an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. I'll walk you through cutting it. You'll need a piece of white that measures 4 by 3 3/4, or a lighter color, just something to put on the inside if your base is going to be a darker color. And then you'll need some coordinating cardstock. So I am using Highland Heather, Berry Burst, Peach Pie, and Old Olive. And then I shared the rest of the projects or the products that I'm using. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna start by cutting our pieces. So we can set all of these pieces aside. We're gonna start by cutting this piece. I'll bring in my paper trimmer. Short end at the top, and we're gonna cut it at 4 1/4. So right down the middle. And then we're gonna open the arm and we're gonna score it. So I'm gonna move my cutting blade out of the way. I'm gonna rotate it so the long edge is at the top, and I'm gonna score it at 4 inches, 5.5 inches, and 7 inches. Okay, and now this piece, this measures 4 1/4 by 11. We're gonna rotate it so the long edge is at the top, and we're gonna cut it at 5 3/4. And we're gonna score at 4 inches. I will have all of these measurements in the blog post where I'll have photos of the projects as well. So don't worry about scrambling to write these down. And I will link the blog post in the description below. Okay, so now we've got this piece. This is 4 1/4 high. We're gonna cut it at 3.5 inches. Okay, we're gonna use that piece. And then from this piece, we're gonna cut this so that it is 1.5 inches. And we're gonna trim it down to 4 inches. Okay, so we're using almost an entire piece of 8.5 by 11. These two pieces we don't need. Okay, now we're gonna bring in our card base. So you can also replace this if you don't have this kit. You can replace this with DSP. So just use these measurements. But if you're using a card base for your pattern paper, what you wanna do is you wanna cut it at 4 inches. So I've got the long edge at the top, and I'm cutting it at 4 inches, and then I'm gonna rotate it and cut it at 3 3/4. Okay. And then this piece here, it's already 4 inches, so I'm gonna cut it at 1 1/4 inches. And this piece we won't use. Okay, and then here, my score line is here, so I'm gonna rotate it around so that the score line is on the right-hand side, and I'm gonna cut it to 4 inches. So this piece, this is like a 1/2 inch piece with a score line down the middle. We're not gonna use that. And then I'm gonna rotate it again so the long edge is at the top, and I'm gonna cut it at 3 1/4. So not 3 3/4, 3 1/4. Cut that. And then this piece I'm gonna cut at 1 1/4. And this piece we won't end up using either. Okay, so we've got two pieces that measure 4 by 1 1/4. And then one piece that measures 4 by 3 3/4, and a piece that measures 4 by 3 1/4. Okay, and those can be all the same pattern paper, or you can mix them up. All right, let's see here. Okay, and then this piece, this was a scrap from a different card base. So if you want to create a little pocket here for your tea bag, if you want to insert that, there's a few different ways that you can do it, but this tea bag happens to have a fair bit of bulk in it, so this is the way I chose to do this. So this is a 3/4 inch scrap that I had left over, and it measures 5.5 inches, and then I scored it at 5/8 of an inch from both short ends. Okay, and that gives me that bulk. Now the tea bag that I'm going to put in this one is a little bit flatter, so I think I might make adjustments to that. So we'll see when we get to that point. Okay, all right, so we are done with our paper trimmer. We can get that out of the way. Now this narrow strip that we cut, we are actually going to emboss that. So you want to choose an embossing folder. I am using the Glass Gardens embossing folders. These are smaller, like 3x6 embossing folders. I think they're 6, yeah, 3x6. I'm gonna use this one here. And so I'm gonna put this in here. Now this pattern, I'm not sure how well this is showing up. Maybe if I put this in here, you can see. So you can see that it's a concentrated pattern about halfway, and then it gradually gets a little bit narrower or less concentrated. So I want that concentrated pattern. So I'm gonna put that right there. And I'm gonna slide this over. I'm gonna grab my Stampin' Cut Emboss machine. Okay, and these are not 3D embossing folders. So I find that most of my embossing folders are 3D embossing folders. So you might need a reminder of the sandwich layer if you're in the same position as I am. So you want platform number 1, and then one of your platform number 3s, and then you'll put your folder in there, and then your second platform number 3. So that is the sandwich layer for just a regular embossing folder. 3D embossing folders work a little bit differently. Okay, so we can get that out of the way. Slide this back. Okay. All right, and see, we've got that really pretty pattern. Okay, so now let's start to assemble here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold, I'm gonna grab my bone folder so I can make all my score lines crisp. I'm gonna fold in the center score line on our base, and then I'm gonna fold back and fold back. So we will end up with a W. That's what it's gonna look like. All right. Okay, and then this piece, this has the 1 score line. This is gonna go on here, and we can go ahead and we can adhere this on here. So let's, excuse me, grab some multi-purpose glue. Oh, let's see, we want it, let's do this pattern up. It looks great both sides, actually. So this can go right in here, and you'll have about an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Okay, and then this is going to get attached to the back, and that's going to be your flap. All right, and we can go ahead and do that now. So you want your W's are going to be at the bottom. So these folds are going to be at the bottom. And we'll just line that up so it's nice and even. Okay, and that's what it's going to look like. Okay, and now, now I am going to have it use a magnet as closure. So I will link to where I got my magnets. I got them from Kevin Esty, who lives in Nova Scotia here in Canada. So I will link, he does ship them elsewhere as well, but these are nice flat magnets. They're perfect for this type of project. You can also use Velcro, or you can strategically put your embellishments on here so that you kind of have a flap that you can kind of, will hold it in place. But what I'm gonna do is, these are 2 magnets and they're sticky on one side. So I've got 2 of them stuck together. I've peeled the backing off of one of them, and I'm just gonna put it right in the center there. Peel the backing off of this one, and then I'm gonna close it. And then when I open it, now I've got them perfectly positioned. And now I want to take this larger of the 2 pattern paper pieces, and this is going to go over top. So if you're using Velcro, then you'll want to skip this particular step. You can still attach it here, but you're going to want to put this down before you put your Velcro down, your bottom piece of Velcro. Okay, so that's going to go on there like that. And then that'll close like that. So there's the front. We still need to pretty it up a little bit. And now the back, we're gonna create a little pocket. So that is where I kind of tucked a little gift card. You could also tuck a business card in there. but we're gonna create a little pocket. So I'm gonna add this to our last piece of grape. Again, with about 1/8 of an inch around the edges. Okay, and before we adhere this to this, we need to create our strap. Now I want to point out that this pocket does not go to the top. So you do want to be a little bit mindful about where you put your adhesive. And I'm going to use tear and tape for this. So I'm just going to rip a piece of tear and tape, and it's about 1/2 inch from the top. So I'm just going to add that on there. And then on this side, I'll do the same. And I have a paper piercing tool here somewhere. Okay, so now I'm going to peel this back, and I'm going to adhere my ribbon on here. So this is about a 10-inch length of ribbon. Depending on how long you want your strap to be, you can make it longer. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then I'm going to take some mini glue dots, and I'm going to add a couple mini glue dots just to the top of this, just on either end, because remember, we're going to have a pocket, so I don't want to add adhesive on this part. And I want mini glue dots because I want them to stick to the ribbon. Liquid glue, it could work, but I find that it's better to use a mini glue dot or even a little bit more tear and tape. So the top is open, and then I'm just going to position this, line this up with the bottom, and then stick that on there. And then we've got a little pocket to tuck something into. Okay. All right. Now we can take this piece, and this is going to go on the inside. So this is going to go on here like that. You can stamp on it as well, pretty it up a little bit. I'm just going to leave it plain. And these two pieces, these are going to go on here. So here and here. Let's see. Okay, they're from 2 different pieces, so the patterns aren't going to line up. All right, so we'll just add some adhesive and add this in here. This just adds a little pop of color on the inside of our card. Like that. Okay, so now we're going to do our tea bag piece. So now if your tea bag was like that, my sample, and it was really thick, then doing it this way, where I gave you the measurements, 3/4 of an inch by 5.5, and then scored about 5/8 of an inch from either end. You could probably do 3/4 of an inch, and then just adding adhesive here and here and sticking it down. But like I said, this tea bag is not as full as this one, so I think that would be too, it wouldn't be snug enough to hold it in place. I think it would be a little bit too flexible. So I think what I might do is I'm going to trim at the score line on this. So I'm just going to trim this down so it's just 4¼ inches. So I'm just going to trim on these score lines. And then I'll use a little bit of tear and tape again. So on either end, or on both ends. And we'll take that off. And then I'm going to use my grid mat here, or my glass mat here, the grid on it, and just make sure that this is straight. So it should be the same width as your card base. And then this will just tuck right in there like that. Okay, and then that folds in like that and then closes like that. And we've got our pocket back here. So now we can pretty it up. So what I've done is I've taken my coordinating scraps of cardstock and I've taken the Impressions of Bloom dies. Love, love, love these dies. Okay, so what I've done is these two leaves, I've cut out 4 of them from Old Olive. This peach pie, the smaller of the inside flowers, I cut out, I think, three peach circles. And then I used this flower. So this is actually, these are actually 2 dies. So the outside will actually cut out this flower. This is a 2-step stamp, so it'll cut out that. But when you put the detailed piece on the inside, you can cut it right out of cardstock and it gives you that beautiful detail on the flower. So I did 1 of those from Berry Burst, and then I did the smallest flower. Again, this is 2 dies that I've kind of got stuck together with some washi tape. I cut out 2 of those from Highland Heather. So I've gone ahead and done that so that you didn't have to sit here and watch me run these through. Let me just put these dies back on here and we'll switch these out for the die cut pieces. Okay, so I've got my die cut pieces here and we're going to use some of the dimensionals that came in the Paper Pumpkin kit. And I'm just going to add a dimensional to the center of each one of these flowers. And then we're going to put the peach pie circle in the center. All right, so we've got our 3 flowers. We're going to stamp our greeting. So remember, this little tag is from this sheet that came in the Paper Pumpkin, the Inked Occasions Paper Pumpkin kit. And we're going to use You Are Amazing. That is one of the greetings from that Paper Pumpkin kit. And we're just going to stamp this on this little white strip. It's a little crooked. Let's flip it over. Thankfully, there's 2 sides to a piece of cardstock, right? Oh, it's really hard to see. Getting shadows here. Oh, that's better. Okay. All right. Now we're going to start assembling our little purse, or decorating our little purse. I'm going to take my bone folder, just kind of curl up the flower petals just a little bit. And I'm going to use a couple. These are mini dimensionals, so they're really small. So I'm just going to use a couple of them in the center here. And we'll pop this right on here. And then we're going to take a couple leaves and I'm just kind of curling them up a little bit. I'll add a little bit of adhesive there, and I'm going to put this on here. So normally I say you want to be mindful when you put these things on to not extend past the card base. Here you have a little bit more room. So if we look at the envelope, this is how it's going to fit in the envelope, is this way. So your leaves can stick off going up the top. You don't want them to stick off of the side though. All right. Okay, so we've got that. And then this piece is going to go here, but first we're going to just kind of curl up the petals. And I think we're going to just use flat adhesive. On my sample I used dimensionals, but I think we're going to just use flat adhesive here. So we're going to put 2 of these Highland Heather flowers on here. Like that. And then we can adhere this piece. This is going to get tucked here. Like that. And then we're going to add our 2 leaves. And We'll just tuck these under here. This will give us a little bit of pop of green. Just a nice contrasting color in there. Isn't that pretty? All right, and then we're gonna finish it off with some of our brushed brass butterflies. I'll put one here. This is a great way to pull in or pull out the gold accents that are on this particular card base. So we'll just add a couple on there, and there we go. It is done. And it will slip inside. You will need to pay extra postage, especially if you're putting a gift card and a tea bag in there. But this just slides into your envelope. So it is quite thick, so it will need extra postage, but it does fit into a standard size envelope. Or you can even just gift it like this. But look how cute that is. And then it just opens up like that. So fun and so simple. And you could really replicate this idea with any of the products that you have in your stash. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video, and I will link all of the supplies in the description below. And I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.